All right, guys, welcome back. So we're going to end by talking about how this thing looks, and we're going to try to make it look a little bit nicer. So the first thing we can do, remember, is that we've got these hidden columns that we need to hide away. So we can make sure that those are unhidden for now while we make everything look nice, and we'll get it sorted out later. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the cells that are protected are in fact protected. So for example, these three things have formulas in them. I don't want anybody messing with those. So I'm going to come up to data and protect sheets and ranges, right? So protect date. And we'll do done. All right. Oh, looks like I did that one already. So I protect date. I've got that twice. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete one of those. So we'll trash that permission. There we go. So let's add another sheet or range that we want to protect. So in this case, we need them to be able to enter the date. We want them to be able to enter the receipt number or code. The total costs, you can see we've already protected that with I, and those all need to be entered. However, all of this stuff, we don't want them messing with all of those formulas, right? This is all the drop down. We can leave them having access to this in case they need to change it. But like these tables here, we don't want them messing with that. So I'm just going to click on this and click protect sheet, and it's actually going to protect the whole sheet. We don't even need to put a description in. We can just set permission and click done. And now it's got a little lock symbol on it. And basically what this means is that people can see the sheet, they can see the information that's there, but they can't change it. And this is another reason why it's kind of cool to move that toggle off of your actual charts, right? So if I protect this sheet, right, so on, what that basically means is if we go back here, remember the button that was here originally, they wouldn't be able to change that because it would be on this whole sheet, which is entirely protected. But because we've moved that sheet over to charts, they can still change it. And it's still going to affect the information that is displayed over here. But what it won't do is affect the formulas. They can't mess with any of your formulas that you've taken so much time to set up nicely. All right. So let's go ahead and make everything. Now that we've protected what we need to protect, let's go ahead and make everything look a little bit better. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze my top columns. You see the column names? I don't want those moving around. I also think that I want to be able to scroll right and left without losing the receipt code and the date. I want those two things to always stay over there so I don't get confused. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is draw a box like that, right? So that's kind of where I want it to go. So everything above that and everything to the left of that I want to freeze. And I'm going to go to View, Freeze, and then it says up to current row and up to current column. I just need to click on both of those. What did I do wrong? Oh, I have to select this one. Okay, sorry, a little bit different. So I select right up to the current row that I want to click, that I want to freeze. View, freeze, up to current row, and it puts this little gray line across the top. And now when I scroll down, that stuff at the top stays right there, right? Super useful. So now I'm going to go ahead and select this column where the date is, and I'm again View, freeze, up to current column. And, oh, it says you can't freeze columns which contains part of a merge cell. Here's something where merging can be a problem. So my date is stretching across that. So I'm going to go ahead and unmerge the date. That's not a problem for me. And so I'll just select that again, View, freeze, up to current column. And so now I've got these two bars, which means if I scroll down, the top stays. And if I scroll left to right, the date stays. So that for me is very useful. I'm going to double click this because we don't need it to be so wide. Same over here. And now these three, again, I only need these for my formula. So we are going to end up hiding those eventually. All right, let's go ahead and close this protection on the side, and let's make this look even better. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of the white. The white hurts my eyes, so I'm going to go ahead and make this thing kind of like a dark theme. So we're going to fill in all of these colors with like this darker color. And maybe that's a little bit too dark. Let's go somewhere in the middle range, like there. Maybe even brighter than that. Yeah, that looks okay. So that's like not terribly hard on my eyes, but not too dark. I might go a little bit darker. I'm very picky with my colors, so yeah. All right. So now I've got kind of this darker gray. I'm gonna make the top one even a little bit darker, and I'm going to make these things on the side a little bit darker, just so I get that kind of designation of the area where I don't want to work. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the areas where where things are kind of related to costs. So here's our kind of like numbers that we're putting in. So I might give these like a bluish look to them. And again, I'll make that top one a little bit darker blue to kind of make it separate from its section. And then here we've got their categories. So these are kind of like the four kind of things that they need to organize by category. So I'm going to give those like a little bit of a light purple color. This is just, again, my style. You can set them to whatever color you want. Totally up to you. Oh, that hurts my eyes. I don't like that. Let's go to this light blue. How about that? Oh, very nice. Very subtle. And then I'll make this one like a slightly darker version of that, right? I think you see where I'm going with this. This column, we'll make it a little bit lighter. And we'll just make this maybe a little bit lighter. We'll make that a little bit darker. There we go. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm kind of visually dividing up the space for each category. And so that way people are like, oh, okay, these are like separate spaces. I don't need to worry so much about there being this giant block of thing. It's like this section, and then there's this section, and then there's this section, right? So it just helps people get a better like feeling when they're looking at this thing. All right. You can also change the size of things. So if you want more space for your item description, we can make that a bit wider. And now I'm going to do a few little key things to make this thing look better. I just noticed there's a problem over here, so I'm going to make that darker to match the date. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these three columns. We don't actually need them. They're only used for the formulas. You can't delete them because we need them for the formulas, but you can hide them, and that's fine. So we get rid of the stuff that we don't really need to see on a daily basis. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break up these sections a little bit. So I'm actually going to go ahead and first select everything, and we're going to add some borders. And in this case, we're going to create a border that just puts a bit of space in between everything. And so I'm going to use a kind of subtle color. Oh, much nicer. There we go. And so now we have a bit of like spacing around everything. And in some places, it's like there's no spacing at all. And that's because the border color matches the other color. The next thing I might do is give every cell a little bit more height. All right, so you make sure you have everything selected, and you just drag down a little bit, and you can increase the height of all of your cells there. And that'll just space everything out a little bit nicer. And we can select them all again and make sure all of them are aligning to the center so that they don't like go to the bottom in a weird way. And immediately this is looking much more user-friendly, right? Like, I mean, just picture what it looked like before compared to what it looked like now, right? This is much easier on the eyes, much nicer for working. You can also try changing the font to different fonts to see if your font choice can help make it easier to work. Some fonts are pretty hard on the eyes. Other ones are less easy to read. So it's really up to you what sort of font you like. For me, I find that Comformata is actually easy on my eyes. So I tend Comforta, not Comformata. I tend to use this one often when I'm doing spreadsheets. It's a little bit of a bigger font, but again, just easier on our eyes. All right. Anywhere here where it's like things are getting cut off, you can just double click, and that'll spread it out nicely to make sure that it's allowing you to see everything. And you might need to do that in places where, for example, the font size has changed. And you can shrink things down if you don't need them to be that big. You can make them bigger if you want them to be a little bit bigger. It's pretty easy to adjust, right? So another thing we're going to do to make it look a little bit cleaner is we're just going to get rid of all the columns and rows that we don't actually need. So in this example, we only did up to column number letter O. So I'm just going to hold Shift and go all the way to the right and right click on that and delete columns P to AC. And so what that's going to do is that's basically going to make it so that there's nothing more over here. So there's no scrolling required left and right. Everything is just visible. If you need to scroll left and right, that's fine, but then I don't have to scroll left and right across a bunch of empty cells that I'm not using. And I can actually do the same thing for the the cells below that I don't need. So in this case, let's just keep like, I don't know, 100 cells or something, 100 rows. So I can just right click over here and delete those rows. And that is actually very useful in keeping your file a reasonable size. Sometimes it just automatically adds thousands and thousands of rows, so you just have to keep your eye on that. Be careful with this option. So I'm going to set this to add 10 more rows at a time. Hopefully it'll remember that next time so it doesn't go crazy adding more and more rows. I think that's why I was lagging out before. I had 18,000 rows in this. So just be careful with that little bug. All right. So I would say already this is looking much better. This is something that I wouldn't mind to come and see. But we're going to do a few more little tricks here that I want to teach you about conditional formatting. And so there's many different ways you can use conditional formatting. However, I'm just going to do a couple examples to show you guys what you can do. And so I think the first thing we'll do is we'll come over to project totals. We'll do some conditional formatting in here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this whole box here that has numbers in it. And I'm going to go up to Format and Conditional Formatting. And so basically conditional formatting allows you to change the format of a text if certain conditions are met. And so in this case, what I want it to do is I actually want it to change the format if it's not 0. So in this case, I'm going to actually change the format rules to if the cell is greater than, and I'll set it to 0. And so look at all the different options you have. So first you can have if it's empty, or you can have if it's not empty. You can have it be text contains. You can have it be text does not contain. So this is almost like setting up custom formulas, but instead of adjusting the result of the contents of the cell, it's going to impact the style and format of the cell rather than the contents of the cell. All right. So look at all these different options that you have and think of what you can do with them. The one that I'm going to use for now is going to be greater than, and I'm going to set it to 0. So if it's greater than 0, it's going to get this little highlight, and I can then go ahead and say, you know what, I also want it to be bold. So basically this immediately draws my eyes to like, oh, well, you know, these are the actual expenses. These zeros don't really matter, so I don't really need to look at them. And you can change the color, you can change the highlight to whatever you want like it to be. In my case, I'm going to set it to bold. I'm going to set it to italic, and I'm going to have it be a slightly darker blue background. And so that's an example of conditional formatting. It's pretty easy to do, and it's a very powerful tool. I'm going to show you something else that you can do with conditional formatting, and I'm going to show that to you over in our actual expenses. And so here what we're going to do is we're going to apply a conditional format to our totals cost. And so let's go to Format, Conditional Formatting. You'll notice that there's 2 actual tabs up here for conditional format rules. We have single color and color scale. So I'm going to come on over to color scale, and let's go ahead and set a custom color scale where we go from min value, which is going to be a very light blue, to max value, which is going to be this super, super dark blue. And maybe that's a bit too dark because it's hard to see the text like that. So we'll do it around there. That's better. All right, so the min value here is going to be set to our light color, and the max value will be set to our dark color, and it will automatically scale the color gradient between them. And so as you can see here, these higher values have a slightly darker tinge to them. Now we've got a pretty giant range in here from, $10,000 all the way up to like, just a couple dollars, which is why this isn't so dynamic. However, we can solve that problem. Let's just make this 100, 150. We'll just get everything a little bit smaller. $10. Let's look for anything that's huge. We'll make this 200. Just looking for the big ones. And this is basically affecting the scale of our expenses here. So here's another big one. And so you see now the colors are starting to change because we're messing with the largest and lowest. So now the highest value is up here at 1500. So let's go ahead and set that to 200. And so now we start to get a little bit more breakdown in our colors. And so you can see that this could be quite useful in kind of highlighting your more expensive line items and just kind of ignoring the ones that are smaller or, less important. All right. Let's go ahead over to, we'll say done on that. And let's go ahead over to cost per, and we're going to add another conditional format rule. Let's say that you have a condition in your project whereby any expenses that are more than $1,000 need special approval. And so in this case, we would say value is greater than or equal to, we put in 1,000, and we can set that to be a dark blue color with some bold font. And then we can say, let's make it 500 because we don't have any examples there that are smaller than that. So anything that is greater than or equal to 500 needs a special approval. So done. And so now you've got two things. You've got this color scale over here, giving you a kind of just a visual indicator of your various values. And on this side, we've got our like warning limit if it's like, hey, that's actually higher than it needs to be. Let's go ahead and make it like a lighter orange color. To be more like a, hey, check this out. This is trying to get your attention. So there you go. So that gives you some ideas of what you can do with the conditional formatting. We can close that. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to make our chart look pretty. And our chart layout background that it's on as well will need to look a bit nicer. So we're going to go ahead and work on making this look a little bit more beautiful. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to cut this. And remember, you can't copy this. This needs to always be cut because that is a dynamic button which is actually changing the contents of this chart and the data where it comes from. Remember, you can always change a chart's data by right-clicking it and selecting Data Range and changing where it gets its data from. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this look good. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say that all the borders are going to be filled, and they're going to be filled with this light gray color, and then the whole background is also going to be the light gray color. Immediately what we've just done is we've made it so that the borders are actually invisible, and this is the start of making things look really nice. I'm also just going to go ahead and just double click on all of these columns to make them the exact same width, excuse me. And that will help us later. But for now, we can just set this like so. All right. And this column will probably need to be wider to fit the widest of our options here. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make this button nice and big and obvious. Okay. So let's go ahead and set it to this big purple color here. And then I'm going to even help out, right? I'm going to give some text to guide. Oh, by the way, if I do something like that and I move it over, I can get the original background color in just by grabbing that and dragging it up, and that will copy the formatting of that slide. So I might put some guiding text in, like click to set chart conditions. Something like that. Right? Maybe even a little arrow, you know? We could probably even Google arrow symbol and just copy that from Google. This is the fastest way that I found to add arrows into things. It's always faster than looking for the shortcut. There you go, arrow symbol. And we'll go ahead and set that text to something big and bold that makes it easy to see. Why didn't it change? Let me try that again. There we go. Let's go to 14. Let's align it to the center. There we go. And we could maybe, I don't know, underline it. And so now there's this big thing that says click to set chart conditions. I'm going to make that just off black because I always think that black text on light backgrounds looks a little bit intense. And so now you've got this dynamic button which is changing this chart. And so let's go ahead and edit this chart to make this look a little bit nicer as well. And so we're going to right click, click these three dots and go edit chart. And the very first thing we're going to do is come over to customize. And so we go to chart style. The background color I am going to set to match the backgrounds that I have set for the chart. So it's basically now invisible. All right, the background is invisible. Let's go to edit chart again, customize, and we're going to set the border color to none. Now if you want to make it 3D, that might be nice for you. It's up to you if you like that. Not my particular thing. And then you also have this maximize option, which basically just pushes everything right to the edges there. I also don't really like that. I like the ability to be able to adjust the axes like so. So first of all, if you click on anything, if you hover your mouse over anything on the chart itself, you will see that it highlights it. And if you actually select it, it opens those settings options on the side. So you don't have to always go through everything here to find out what you want to do. You can also just click on it over here and it will open that axis control panel on the side. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is change the fonts to be a little bit, I don't know, more interesting. So narrow might help with the spacing. So let's try that. That already looks better, even though it's pretty small. I'm definitely going to change the color here. This blue is like really quite harsh, and I don't particularly like it. So I might do something like that. That's a much nicer, softer, easier to look at color. And again, we don't have that much data in our fake data set, so we're missing a lot of information here. But the cool thing is that it is still this dynamic thing. And now, watch this. Check this out. This is pretty cool. What you can also do is, I'm going to copy this chart, paste it, and you could have a second version of this same chart if you so chose. So it will also be affected by that same toggle switch, right? Because it's still pulling from the same location. And so now what you could do is, for example, something like chart style, and you could go to setup and actually change it to a pie chart. And so now you're seeing your monthly breakdown based over the year. I don't think this is the best way to display data spread over the year. But if you imagine, for example, if you were doing your categories, having them kind of calculate the totals over the year, charting this part of the chart instead of this part, you could actually find some interesting information about like which quarter you're spending more time in or more money in. And so you can do that just by, you can have two versions of the exact same chart. And I'll just give you an example of that over here on our dashboard. Is right at the top here. This and this are exactly the same, coming from exactly the same data sets. And so when this changes, it affects both of these charts equally. And so the bar chart is quite nice because it visually shows exactly how much we're spending in each of our main program areas. And the pie chart kind of is a different look with kind of more of a focus on the percentage. So we kind of get a better idea of how much of our income is going to various sections of our work, right? Broken up into our main categories. And then this is fairly easy. This is literally just going to be like, this is just a box that you can make that is just going to reference these boxes right here. So it's just literally equals this, equals this, equals this, equals this. And then when you change that toggle switch over there, it will change. So that's an easy one to do. So we can go ahead and add that to our chart. So let's delete this, and we'll just make a little thing right next to it that says year-to-date total, and then we'll do Q1. Oops, not Q that. Q1 and Q2, Q3, Q4, and then average per month. Right, so let's go ahead and make this font look nice. Again, we want to keep everything looking somewhat elegant in this section here. I'm even going to increase the height of those. Well, we'll do it this way. We'll increase the height of all of them. And we'll just bring this back up. I'll bring this over here. We'll copy that down so that it erases that ugly formatting. And what we might do is we'll put all of that in a slightly different color box. And I will make the borders match that slightly different color. There we go. All right, where's our toggle? Let's bring both of these back up to here where we can see them. Okay. Now, for this background, I'll just point something out to you. Notice right now the background is matching the color, so it covers anything that's underneath it. There's another option that you can do there, which is to take the background color and say none. And so now you can do all sorts of other things, but you just have to be careful because now, like for example, my toggle button is underneath the chart. The charts always appear on top, so just bear that in mind. But that's an easier way to just have it blend into the background without having to set up the color. What we can do up here is we can give the chart a title. So instead of using the default chart name, I'm actually going to just set it here. So we'll say, what is this? Annual expenses by project. So let's give this a nice bold heading, a nice big font. It's easy to read. And we can even merge these cells across the entire top and align them. Again, we don't need to worry so much about the formatting here because once again, this is just a display area, right? And just so it's all nice and centered on the chart. That looks pretty good. There we go. So yeah, so we've got annual expenses by project now. We can make this thing come up a little bit higher, let's say to there or so. And it's still dynamically adjustable here. And we've got this little side box on the side, so let's set that up now. So first, let's go ahead and make that bold, a little bit bigger. And make it a little bit smaller maybe. There we go. And so this one is easy. This is just going to be equals, and then we'll go over to our project totals and select that. And then this one is going to be, so I'm just going to copy that. Let's just paste this down the way. So we got N27, except we need it to stay at 27. So I need to put a $sign on the 27. And the thing that changes is going to be the letter. So this is going to become O, P, Q, Q, R, and S. Is that correct? Project totals. So this is N is going to be totals, then O, P, Q, R is going to be the quarters, and S will be the monthly average. So yeah, that's correct. So, and again, dynamically adjustable. So that will all change. Let's bring it down to here. And we'll say numbers. I don't know, whatever. Breakdown. Let's merge that together, center it, put it in some nicer font, a little bit bigger, align it to the middle of the text, maybe underline it. That seems too small. There we go, 12. What size is that? 14. Okay, we'll make it 14. Beautiful. So now, as we change this here, everything changes all together. So we've got our EE program. We can see the chart. We can set it there. We can see the year-to-date total for the EE program. We can see the quarter one for the EE program. And you can now imagine doing the same sort of chart for your different grants. So when somebody says, oh, well, how much have you spent in this quarter from our grant that we've given you? No problem. You just come to your dashboard. You select the grant that you're working on, and you have all the information right there. How much did you spend in each quarter? How much are you spending per month on average? Your year-to-date total. And again, this is year-to-date because it's a dynamic chart. So as you continue to spend on it, we'll automatically continue to add that information in. And of course, because you've included the totals option, you can always just select totals to see all the expenses by project combined together. This should say click to select they should say click to select project. Probably is good enough. Yeah, so there we go. Click to select project. Oh, I'm actually just going to take this block of text here and align it to the right so that it's, there we go, much nicer next to my totals toggle. And so there you go. You're selecting your totals project. So there you go, guys. This is kind of this is how we do it. This is how we make our dynamic dashboards that are editable. I hope this is enough for you guys to go out and experiment with your own stuff and hopefully learn some new things that should speed up your workflow. I'll just hop back over here to see if there's anything that you can see here that is not something that we learned already. So here we've got our 4 categories that we've assigned to everything. One thing we didn't do is match formulas. I think I'm not going to go through that today because that's not necessary. I think what we've done is enough for most cases. But if you're curious about match formulas, that's another thing that we have used to tag one specific type of expense to a particular campaign automatically, but it's not strictly necessary. So yeah, so all of this it should be now pretty self-explanatory. I think you guys should be able to do everything that you see here using the formulas that we've been through in this whole presentation. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for going through all of this. I know that math and Google spreadsheets and thinking like this can be a bit exhausting, but I mean, just imagine what you could do with these kind of tips and tricks. And this is just scratching the surface. Of course, there's so much more you can do with Google Sheets, but in terms of this training videos, these pro tips and tricks from us, this was, I thought, the kind of most important information to cover with you guys, simply because this is the one that is going to be most useful to your day-to-day operations of your project or your program. I mean, with this, you can manage your own finances. You don't need to spend money on an accountant. You have all of your information in a very clear and easy to find platform where when somebody asks you for information, it's at the tip of your fingers. It just takes you a few seconds to pull up the information. Oh, how much did we spend last month on this project compared to this month? No problem. You just come over to your project totals, you check the project, you look at the month, and then you can compare. If you want to get the total output numbers, you come over here, you select the program that you're interested in, you can, just immediately from here download that chart as a PDF, a PNG, to put into a presentation or a proposal after you set it to what you want. And you can do that with 100 different charts if you'd like. So hopefully this has given you guys some good starting points to build off of. And yeah, best of luck with your budgets, with your proposals, with your financial tracking, or with your data entry. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we went through here is not only useful for finances, but also for collecting and organizing scientific data. So if you're designing a data entry sheet for tracking, for example, we did something like this for our tree nursery program. So every single planting session had a log set into an automatic tracking sheet like this. And so it was very, very easy for our tree nursery staff to just complete very simple entries on every planting event. And then, once a week, we would do a count to check how many trees had died and how many trees were still growing. The average height of the trees could be accounted for. And that was plugged in on a simple data sheet. And then we had other data sheets that automatically gave us a bigger picture of the whole project. And so we would have charts that are showing our growth rate, our success rate to our failure rate, the total numbers planted. We had systems that were automatically tracking our stock of seeds. So as trees were being planted, it was automatically saying, hey, you've only got, a couple hundred seeds left. Maybe it's time to order some new ones. And so when the seeds fell below a certain number, our stock thing would turn red, because we'd set it to, when it falls below this, we want the condition to turn red to tell us like, hey, you're running low on seeds, we need to restock. There's so much you can do with with Google Sheets to help manage your projects better. So hopefully you guys learned something for this. Thanks for sticking with it. And I will put this sample sheet that I have made, I will download this as a CSV file, which you can open in Google Sheets of your own. That way you, there we go, comma separate, CSV file, there we go. So that way you can just copy and paste this document straight into your sheets if you want to, check your formulas against mine and make sure everything is working properly, all right? Okay, guys, thanks so much, and I think that's going to conclude our videos on Google Sheets. So we've got a few more administrative and project management skills to go through, and then that should wrap up the course on project management and admin, and we'll move to the fun part of the course, which is going to be on visual design and communication, which is, in my opinion, one of the most important things needed for conservation. Okay? Have a good day, everyone, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.